Okay, after we saw the screen of the movie, there was a Q&A with Hugh Grant, and he talked about, the question was, why haven't you done bad guys before, and this is late in the career? And he gave this long answer that, well, you get to eat up the stage. Why did you just say it? When you're the bad guy, you get the best lines.
You get the best lines. To be fair, he's been the bad guy in a number of other films. They're just romantic comedies. And he was the bad guy 6 times in Cloud Atlas. So, I don't think this is really a new thing for him, but it's a great thing.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it. Let's talk about heresy. Let's talk about the Heretic.
Welcome back to the show. I'm one of your hosts, the guy keeping Nick in his basement, Kyle Goethe from GoatFilmReviews.com.
I'm Nick, the person with all the puzzles. Okay, thanks for watching, and for our loyal fans, thank you for continuing to support the show. Another way you can support the show, hit the like and subscribe button. Also, you get opportunity to join our Patreon. We got some great content, great deals, and of course, an opportunity for you to pick a movie that we'll review on a future episode. Of course, a shout out to you as well. Kyle and I are both members of Minnesota Film Critics Alliance. Check out that webpage for critics reviews as well as ours. And today we're talking about A24's Heretic.
I thought it was B25. Mormon missionaries Sister Barnes and Paxton are spreading the word of the church when they arrive at the home of Mr. Reed, a diabolical man who wants to see them really prove their faith.
Okay, this was at the Toronto International Film Festival, and now I got distribution, I think, produced by A24, and now we get to see it. First time directors, I think, Scott. And
well, they directed Haunt, a film we covered previously on
the show. That's right. God dang it. And I loved Haunt.
I think they did 65, that time travel dinosaur movie with Adam Driver last year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were supposed to do something with Sam Raimi after Haunt.
And their most notable thing, of course, is they were the original writers and creators of the A Quiet Place films. Okay. They were not directing those. They wanted to direct them, but they knew that it would be a better option to get John Krasinski, a more famous name, in the chair.
Okay, and before we continue, my gosh, I think I have to put Chung Hon on one of my favorite living cinematographers, working cinematographers today.
Yeah.
I mean, he's done Zombieland, but he also worked with Park Chan-wook with Old Boy and Lady Vengeance. Lady Vengeance, my God, if you haven't seen that, go see that right now. And then Hotel Artemis, which... it's a flawed film,
good-looking movie,
but great-looking movie. I mean, fantastic. And this one as well was great cinematography in this movie.
I actually don't know how the actors work, because if you seriously watch behind-the-scenes stuff with Chung Hoon Chun, not even just the movies that he's watched, which are great, but watch the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's insane watching them run around this set with all these different contraptions and filming things. I don't know how an actor
cinematographers always have to be
doesn't do this every time the camera goes by. And follow along, because it's insane just watching the thing having on the screen, more so than the film itself. When you see it, you're like, wow, that actually looks pretty good.
So thanks for bringing up Haunt. I completely forgot that they did that. I love that movie. But with Haunt and this movie, I really do like their writing.
Oh yeah, they're right. I think their writing honestly is a little bit better than the directing, but part of that I just mean is that they are really great at kind of looping stories around in circles. And I think that's what they kind of had with A Quiet Place. It's what they have with
the
Haunt.
maze through a Haunt.
And I think this is kind of an interesting showcase of their talents as writers, because it is basically a 110-minute long movie with 3 people talking in a room. There's stuff that happens, yes, but it's really a talk movie. Yeah. It's my dinner with Andre minus the dinner. Gives me the blueberry pie.
No, but a tight structure script, probably the tightest I've seen of this year. Characters all fleshed out and developed. Production design and the look of it, outstanding. And then the pacing of it. I mean, it's almost like you get the introduction. I love how the introduction of the movie goes, not safe. They're talking about genitals right away.
Well, it's interesting to watch them open, because they're opening with kind of like a thing that makes fun of them in some ways.
Yeah,
because
and there's a bench that advertises. Yeah.
So it's kind of making fun of its characters, which I think was an interesting choice, because it immediately made me kind of not like I liked the 2 young ladies, but I was like, I didn't really kind of like connect with them because they were just so far away from anything I've ever known. But as you immediately see them, they kind of pop up and they have more character to them, and you get to fully realize them throughout the film. So it's kind of like you dealt their abilities early on so that they can surprise you.
So it's Sophie Thatcher and then Chloe East both come from Mormons, or what,
Yeah, I didn't realize that.
both
I
came
think it
from
came
the
up
church.
in the Q&A after the film was done. That's an interesting thought, because Sophie Thatcher I'm a little bit more aware of than Chloe, just because Sophie was in like the Book of Boba Fett. She was in I think an underrated horror movie from a couple years ago, The Boogeyman. She's done some stuff before, but Chloe East was a complete shock to me. I'm sure she was in The Fablemans, but I couldn't tell you who.
Yeah, and then it's Sophia that sings Bob Dylan's "Knocking on Heaven's Door" at the end. And she's actually singing that at the end of the credits from the movie. But right, it was palpable. The intensity was there, beginning to end. Even when you get kind of the archetype over like Barbarian, when you go down to the basement, Descendant of kind of the exposition, I was all enthralled with the beginning to end.
Yeah, I thought the movie itself was pretty damn exciting, and I think what I will say is the structure of how the characters move forward and make their choices, it does seem to be written in a way to kind of force people into a corner where they have to where they want to get their characters at. Yeah. I felt like there was elements in the story itself that felt like they could fall apart like a house of cards if you started shaking at them, similar to Jordan Peele's Us, which I think is a great movie thematically speaking and a really fun experience, but I was kind of like, some things about that didn't quite make sense to me. I felt that during Heretic. Now, as far as the actual like what's happening in the meat of the movie, that stuff was incredible. I thought that was great. Yeah. The argument that's being made by Mr. Reed is really interesting, because what I pointed out to my wife after we got done was it feels like the kind of movie that people who are really like faith people are going to come away saying it affirms their faith. And you're going to have people that come away from it who are not faith people that will say it affirms their not faith. And I think it's going to give everybody kind of a little bit of something, because it does dance around on that quite a lot.
Bad guys' exposition always feel like you're right. Mm-hmm. You're right. You know, when the Joker talks about I'm chaos and chaos is fair and all that stuff. Well, you're like, well, I almost agree with you. You're not so bad. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the same way. He's very polite. He's very manners. But you can't cross him. And in fact, you cross him, he doesn't get mad. He smiles at you. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's very much the opposite almost of how a villain portrayed. Also, he doesn't look threatening. He doesn't wear dark clothes. You know, and that's kind of the thing about this villainy is he never seems to be a threat.
Yeah, nothing in his performance is inherently threatening under description.
Yeah. Even when he's slicing you, he doesn't feel like, oh, that feels bad. Yeah.
I mean, I had my wife look at me in the middle of his discussion on the comparisons between religions and Monopoly, but because it seems like something I would probably say. Monopoly. By the way, the absolute distaste that I had for the comparison between Islam and Monopoly Ultimate Banking. Monopoly Ultimate Banking is
Top
straight
notch?
trash.
Okay, straight trash.
But anyway.
But that was that character.
Yeah, that was a character moment, yeah.
It's not what you're supposed to, I got to understand, it's the character's belief.
Yeah.
And it's his justification to do harm.
But he called it the new hotness, Nick, and I'm upset about that. But
that's the whole point of it. It's not to establish that maybe you should give up religion. It's the character's justification to be bad.
Yep.
And it's the wrong thing to do.
Yeah, and that's again like part of the thing that I go at is I feel like I don't really, after seeing the film, I don't think that there's enough writing for Mr. Reed that makes me think like I understand him as a character. He is in kind of a lot of ways almost like a troll living under a bridge.
No, there's not much.
There's not much motivation.
And I
to
don't
him.
care about his backstory. I really don't care how he got to this point.
Yeah. I don't care in a necessity, but there's that question of like the purpose of what he's doing. Like, what is his motivation that I did kind of question.
This whole elaborate thing to entrap people and dump their as excuses why he hurts them.
Yeah. That's the thing about it. Is, it works within the confines of the film. I just wanted to know more. And
then you think the main criticism to me was like, well, Jesus, why don't you just start a cult? Then you can have a tax write-off. Instead of paying all this money for this, then you can start your own cult, and then you get a tax write-off. And then you make money instead of doing all this, and you have to hide in secret.
Yeah, what is it Creed says on The Office? It's you have more fun. You have more fun when you're a member of a cult, but you make more money as a leader.
Yeah.
So
I got a sidebar. Topher Grace is in this.
Yeah, I was so happy I caught him. Did you catch him when he was in the movie, or did you wait until the credits?
Wait till the credits.
Because I saw him and I was like, that looks like Topher Grace. And I said that, and the person behind me even laughed and was like, oh,
wait a minute.
Like,
I didn't get until the door, because he's wearing glasses.
Yep.
And I was like, wait a minute. And then the credits like, oh my gosh. But the person next to me is like, I wasn't going to say anything. Just to ruin it for me. But right. That's Topher is, I like that he peppers into some things. He doesn't really carry the movie, but he's in there kind of as almost like spices to add to the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny. I think it was a nice little thing because I was thinking of Topher Grace and how he criticized the Star Wars prequels in much the same way that Mr. Reed kind of placed the Star Wars prequels and Jar Jar Binks on his layering.
So it might have been an intentional hire, but
I don't know. It just felt like something funny because Topher Grace actually re-edited the Star Wars prequels into one film, and that was just something he likes to do in his spare time. But what I really appreciated about the film was that the meat of what's going on is kind of more important than the background and the stuff that we don't get as viewers. Yeah. And I think specifically his viewpoint on iteration, I think was really interesting, especially how what was it? The one the original Spider-Man when he said, "With great power comes great responsibility," and he insulted said Voltaire, and it's like they don't come back to saying that that's an iteration, but he's literally talking about iterations of words.
Yeah, we always talk about in art history class. The original never gets celebrated. It's always the copy or what was stolen from the original.
Yeah.
And Picasso's great quote is, great artists don't borrow, they steal." And that was what he's referring to. It's never the original work we celebrate. And Picasso himself talked about, I am not making anything new. Go look at cave paintings. They were the first ones. Mm-hmm. You celebrate me. I'm an iteration of what was already transpired. We have learned nothing. And I think that's what he's trying to come from, is we don't celebrate the original content. We celebrate what is catapulted. Chevy Chase started Weekend Update. He doesn't get celebrated. It's Dennis Miller and Kevin Nealon doing Weekend Update because he took it and made it much more popular.
They made it the thing. That was the reason you would turn in sometimes would be to watch that. Yeah. You know, and it's interesting. We live in a time period right now where the remake does not get. And maybe it's because the remake is very on the face of like telling you it's a remake. But we see a lot of films that take elements from other films and people say like, well, Avatar is just a remake of Dances with Wolves with Blue People, and they don't appreciate the fact that Avatar has some other things going on as well.
But the flaw to his logic is he believes in absolute, that it always happens, and sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes always the original sustains.
And that's kind of the funny thing about him as a character, is that as we see throughout the film, he believes that he is infallible, much in the same way that he criticizes religions for having infallibility.
Right.
Is he believes that
they're the wrong people. Yeah. I'm doing what just as naturally comes to me, and you let me. You guys are the wrong. You're the evil.
Let me prove it to you. And near the end of the film, we get that question of, has he proven it, or has he kind of become a facade of himself? Right. Has he kind of developed in some ways? And I think at the end of the film, there's a choice he makes. In fact, spoiler alert, because the film is out now, so like spoiler alert, I'm going to mention something that happens at the end of the film that I think is really powerful to the story. At the end of the film, he jokingly tells Sister Paxton to pray for him. And then he crawls over and cries in her arms as she's doing it, which I think is such a bold take to reduce your villain in that way to the very thing he hates is now the thing he clings to. I just think that's a really funny little like character moment for his finale.
Right. I love it that he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
Yeah, but he'll never admit it. And even at the end of the film, he still doesn't admit it.
Probably got him entrapping is he's a right fighter. You'll never apologize for his mistakes, never make amends, and never addresses all the flaws to him. He's right all the time.
Yeah, and there is a moment. I will say there is something that happens near the end of the film as well when his script has to get flipped because it gets picked apart by Sister Barnes so much, and he kind of comes up with another plan mid-film. Yeah. That extra plan didn't work for me as well as the first portion of the film, where he's kind of like trying to work his way around like, how do I keep this thing going? Yeah. That part kind of fell apart for me a bit. Not enough to derail the film. I still think the meat of the film is so good. And it definitely made me want more blueberry pie. So
yes, thanks Alamo Draft House for serving us blueberry pie.
I wish they would have told me. I ordered a lot of food first.
and I was hesitant to eat it. So, what do you think of our assessment of The Heretic? Yeah. Keep going with the conversation. Like and subscribe, or make a comment down below.
Do you think it's better than Exorcist II: The Heretic? We do. But maybe you do too. Yeah. Let us know down in the comments section. And thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Kyle and Nick on Film. Even though the spooky season is done, you can always expect a little bit more spooky from us. And you can check out my 31 Days of Horror over at goatfilmreviews.com, as well as a lot of the end of year covers that's beginning right now. I'm going to stay busy, and I hope you do too.
Thanks for watching.